Good morning. Welcome to the 25th anniversary of the Franklin County Quilters Guild Quilt Show. So obviously we've been doing this for 25 years, but the Guild has been around for longer than that. It started in 1991 with a small group of women sitting around someone's kitchen table. And from there they decided they wanted to share their love of quilting, not just with one another, but extending it into the community. So we have grown into an approximately 70 member organization, and we all contribute quilts and donate them to the community. And we also support one another with our challenges with quilting or our challenges in life. So we're a very supportive group. So these are some of our comfort quilts that members have made, and we donate them to different organizations like Home Health and Laura's House. We sometimes give them to groups who have special needs, like Spectrum Youth Services, where they're starting to remodel a building on Lake Street that will have 15 beds for the youth who are in need of some support, or who are unhoused, or who have some other challenges. So we are donating twin-size quilts to them for their bedrooms. We also have connected with the New Hope Recovery Program here in St. Albans, which was just featured in the St. Albans Messenger, and they're going to start a 5 or 6 bed home for women who are on the road to recovery from addiction. So we will be furnishing quilts to them as well. So if you would like to take a look at some of these quilts, we have a few members who put together quilt kits sometimes. This one was made from a kit of fabrics that are donated or purchased. And some of the proceeds from this quilt show, from the donations people make, go to purchasing these fabrics. But others of them are made by people who, like this quilt here, where they want to get rid of some of the scraps that they've created by making a quilt. So they use them and make another quilt with what's left over from the main quilt they started with. So many of these are scrap quilts, is what we call them. And we all have an issue with scraps. They grow, it seems. So when people come to the quilt show, the first thing they'll do is check in here at this table, where they will get a little information and pick up one of these clipboards in order to vote on quilts that they see throughout the quilt show in each category. And we have 5 categories: bed quilts, lap quilts, challenge quilts, miniature and art quilts, and wall hangings. So people get to vote on each one, and then when the quilt show closes on Sunday, we stand around and hear the numbers and hopefully receive a ribbon, the coveted ribbons for our quilts. We also started a few years ago by going out into the community and soliciting sponsors. So these are all of our sponsors for this year's quilt show. These are different organizations in the community, as well as individuals who may have an interest in our quilt guild. I know a couple of people on here are former presidents of our guild, and they are sponsors. And sponsors make a donation to our guild, and in return, they get to give out these ribbons. Each sponsor is invited to come to the quilt show and select a favorite quilt and honor it with a ribbon. Every year, we donate a charity quilt, and this is this year's charity quilt, and that is given to another nonprofit organization so that they can sell raffle tickets to make money for their organization. This year's recipient is the Commission of St. John's in Swanton, Vermont, and it's an 1830 building, and it's listed on the National Registry of Historical Buildings, and they have a huge restoration project going on. So we are donating this quilt to them so that they can make some money for their restoration. And then we ask if people would like to make a donation. We do purchase fabric to keep our hands busy creating quilts and donating them throughout the community. We also give some of these quilts to families who have experienced a tragedy, whether it be flooding or a fire, and so we do donate those quilts to those kinds of people too. We have members in Chittenden, Franklin, and Grand Isle counties, as well as I think we have a few members from Lamoille County as well. So we do get a lot of information about where these quilts could go. So let's go look at some quilts. Another one of our annual activities for our quilt guild is the raffle quilt. So this was made by a former president of our guild, and she donated it. So what we do is we sell raffle tickets at different events starting in the summer, whether it's a farmer's market or like a Christmas bazaar kind of thing or a craft show. We have a member who diligently goes to different events and sells raffle tickets so that before the quilt show, we know how much money we've already raised for our guild. And then during the show, people have the option of purchasing these as well. So this year, I don't know how much money we've raised already with selling raffle tickets, but oftentimes it's upwards of $1,000. And we use that money to buy fabric and buy the batting that we use in between the top layer of the quilt and the backing. And so we really do need some of that money to have fabric on hand. Fabric when I joined the guild in 2010, fabric ran around $5 or $6 per yard, and now it's around $12 to $15 per yard, and upwards of that depending on who the fabric designer is. So, it really helps if we have donations and money from our raffle to help buy that fabric. So if you come to the guild show, be sure to buy a raffle ticket. Okay. Each year, for the last few years, we have been graced with the presence of the Quilts of Valor Foundation. This is a couple from southern Vermont, and they actually come up here on Friday because they want people to know about what their organization does. And so they do make quilts for veterans, and they present them. And if you look at some of these pictures, they have a special poem that they read and a process. And today, at some point, they'll be presenting a Quilt of Valor to a deserving veteran here in St. Albans. And this quilt behind them was made by one of our members and donated to Quilts of Valor. So we do those kinds of things as well to honor the people who have served. They even bring these folders that have patterns for quilts and patterns for blocks to make quilts, and then we send them to the Quilts of Valor Foundation. So we are always pleased to have them join us. So let's go look at some large bed quilts. So this quilt is called Joyful Gathering, and it is made by a woman who makes many quilts, and you'll see her quilts throughout the show. She has 20 different trees. Each one has a different center. If you look at it closely, the center of the tree has a different pattern. These are very, very small pieces, as you can see. You have to have a lot of patience and be very precise to do this kind of quilt block, but she is masterful at that. So a nice Christmas quilt. And this one is called Look Out. It has, every tree is a different fabric, and then she has some woodland creatures hiding in between the trees. This was made from a quilt kit where she ordered the pattern and all of the different fabrics. And once she received that, she had to do all the cutting and sewing to make this quilt. So we were talking before the filming about where do quilters buy fabric, and that can be a challenge sometimes because there aren't as many quilt shops in Vermont as there used to be, many of them in the very southern part of the state and a couple in the very northern part of the state. But we do try to support our local shops, and we also shop online sometimes to get the fabric that we need. So this quilt is called Besties. And if you look at it closely, each block is different animals. So we have, rabbits and dogs, and down here we even have some fish. And this woman used lots of color to emphasize the animals in her quilt. And with the black in here for the framing, it gave it a really nice touch. This quilt is called Support Local. This is made from fabric purchased during the Vermont Shop Hop. The Shop Hop is an annual event throughout the month of March where quilt shops participate in giving special deals and maybe even giving gifts to the people who come there to shop. So this pattern is called the tumbler pattern, and you can see it if you look closely. And they're just alternated. One is, facing down and one is facing up. And it really makes a nice pattern to use for using all different kinds of fabrics like this. It's a very old pattern design that she used some more modern fabrics in it to make it look contemporary. This quilt, called Pocket Change, this was an online challenge mystery quilt where they gave you the pattern and you could choose your own colors. And many people with this online group called Vermont, Quilting in Vermont made this. And I was going to make it, but then I realized it was very similar to another quilt I had made that was hanging on my quilt rack at home, and I'm like, I'm not going to make this one this time. But it makes a really stunning pattern because you have like two things going on in this quilt. This is a very interesting quilt. This was, in September, we hosted a speaker who lives in New Zealand, but she grew up in northern New England. But she comes back once a year and she travels to many different quilt guilds and other organizations. And she designed this quilt specifically for our guild. It is a mystery quilt. So we had clues, like perhaps we started with just making these little blocks right here. And so maybe we had to make 40 or 50 of them. And we had cutting instructions first. And then the next time we had a different clue, maybe it was making these kinds of blocks right here. So we had no idea what it was going to look like until we got the final clue. So we had these stacks of all these different kinds of little blocks. And when, in the end, the final clue showed us how to put it together and make this stunning quilt. Many of our members have made this quilt. I've made it, but I don't have it finished yet. This is what we call a Bargello quilt. And if you look at the gorgeous colors, it creates a wave, and she called it crashing waves. This is made from sewing strips of fabric together in a certain order and then cutting them into strips of different widths. If you can see, some of these are cut wide and some of them are cut very small. This is like a 1/2-inch strip. And it creates this effect in the end. And it's another of those quilts where you have to really be thoughtful and precise to get the effect that you want in the end. This one is really stunning. This is called Winter Village, and if you look at it, these are all different houses with doors and windows in a beautiful color wave that gives it this really nice finished look. And this person loves winter scene. She also did the applique of the birds on a branch and the snowflake here and there, so that it gives it that final look of really crafted, well crafted with the applique. Over in this corner, we have a quilt that if you look at it closely, you can see that there's some patterns repeating. For example, if you look down this column, you can see that all of the colors are the same. So these are all yellows, and these are all reds, and these are mixed, but mostly with some purples. These are the blues and the greens. So we called it the bingo quilt because we were given instructions to make this block and bring it to a meeting, which we did. As you can see, there are 6 by 8. There are 48 blocks here. And so we played a game using these blocks that was similar to bingo. We called it Quilto. And then after we were done playing the game, which was really fun, and all of the fabrics are so different, one of our members took it home and created this lovely quilt, which we will in turn donate to someone. So sometimes we have something like this at our meetings just to have fun and to be sociable. And that was what this did for us. This quilt is called Sailing Away. If you look at it, it has blues, reds, and whites, a very nautical look about all the fabric. And this border has sailboats in it as well. And it says here that she makes quilts for family members because they all love sailing. That's a really beautiful quilt. I love the simplicity of it, and you really do see the sailboats. Very nicely done. This is called a pinwheel of flowers. This is made by one of our members, and if you look at the center, you have this lovely pinwheel that's made from very small pieces, and then they just seem to be flying around it. Really, really nice quilt, and this is for sale. She has a tag on it saying that it's for sale. What a great quilt. This is called Catch of the Day. This is made by one of our newer members who's been quilting a while but wasn't a member of our guild. Each fish is a different fabric, and she used what we call batik fabrics. Batiks are hand painted, and they are the same on both sides. They're usually made, a lot of them began in India, but now we have other companies making batiks. So you can see the details in all of the different fabrics, and it really gives your quilt, I love batiks, it gives your quilt depth as far as I'm concerned, but there are many quilters who don't like batiks at all. They tend to be a little stiffer because of the hand painting. Now I think the painting is probably done in a process, in a factory type setting. Not as much hand painting, but you still get the same effect, and it does still create a stiffer fabric. Really nice quilt. I think a fisherman would love that quilt. And this is called 2000 Animal Chirashi. This man, we have one male member of our guild, and he's a former president of our organization. And he is very artistic and very thoughtful about the world, in both the environment and the people. And so if you look closely at his quilt, every block has some kind of animal in the fabric. And he wanted to, he's thinking about a person being warmed by 2,000 animals. He donates all of his quilts to people in need. This quilt is called The Look of Fall. And if you look at it closely, it's every block in this quilt is exactly the same. They're just turned to give this effect of these steps going through the quilt. Really nice choice of fabrics to accentuate this one. Putting the rust and the brown with it makes for a very nice bed quilt. This quilt is called Yuletide Fun. It's a sampler quilt. Sampler quilts are quilts that have many different block styles in them. So if you see this, this is like a half hexy block. It's like a hexagon cut in half and used as this border. Then we have these stars. I think that's called an Ohio star. We have a sampler of applique, and if you look closely, you can see that this is all done by hand. The applique pieces they have like a buttonhole stitch around them, so that the hand applique really gives us a nice touch. In the center, we have what we call either the bow tie block, or some people call it the spool block. I think it's the bow tie, sorry. This one is a star with these corners to give the pinwheel effect. So and then the border, all of these fabrics really do, highlight the colors in the border. It's a really beautiful sampler quilt. Sampler quilts come from history, where women used scraps of clothing that they had sewn and made small blocks as they went along, and in the end they would put them all together in some sort of pattern to make a quilt that had some beauty, but also was used with the scraps of their clothing that they had already sewn. This one is called Valley Ranch. It's an Adidas star pattern from a company called Laundry Basket Quilts. And they do have a lot of patterns and kits that they sell with all of the fabrics, as I talked about earlier. And then you do the cutting and follow the pattern to make this beautiful quilt. And you can see the laundry baskets in the four corners. Also, this border is unique. And if you look closely, you can see the variety of quilting that this woman does. So she has swirls, and she has pebbles, as we call them, that almost look like a flower. And in here, she has little tiny four-corner swirls. And this whole quilt is, she does all of her own quilting, and she is just amazing at how she has figured out how to fill in all the spaces of her quilt. Many of us hire someone to do our quilting for us, like this quilt. And if you look closely at the design, you can see that it repeats. It's called an edge-to-edge quilting pattern. This is a lovely quilt called Meandering Stars, made by one of our members. And it's another mystery quilt by a different designer, but the same thing. She would have gotten clues, and she would have made many of these little blocks in the corners. And eventually she would get a clue that would tell her to put them together. But until you get that final clue, you don't know what you're going to end up with. So choosing your colors is important because it should be something you like, because in the end, you don't know what it's going to look like. This is a really nice mystery quilt. I like the pattern, but that's just me. So over here, we have a quilt called Wild One. And the really beautiful thing about this quilt is all of these fabrics look like a mishmash, but when you put them together with what we call sashing, it separates them just enough so you really get the impact of all of these beautiful designs. And they're all designed by one designer called Kaif Fassett, and many of us love his designs. He started out as a yarn designer and ended up designing patterns in fabrics that many of us lean toward, but they are quite busy, so you have to be careful how you put them together into a quilt. This quilt required, as she said, a lot of fussy cutting. Fussy cutting is when you take your fabric. This is 4 blocks put together, but she cut her fabric so that this medallion print would appear in each of these 4 blocks. And she did the same thing throughout her quilt. And fussy cutting can be tricky. Most of us have templates that are different shapes. This one is a square, and they're clear. They have no markings on them, so you can put it on your fabric and cut around it to get this fussy cut pattern to repeat throughout a quilt. Really lovely choice of fabrics, too. And that medallion concept continues throughout the quilt, especially in the border. You can see where she found these patterns to fussy cut. She probably had a smaller version of this fabric that she cut into these medallions. Really nice quilt. This is, she calls this Missouri Star Road Trip. So Missouri Star is a quilt company from a small town in Missouri called Hamilton, Missouri. And this couple used to live in California. They have, I think, 8 children. I could be wrong, maybe 6. But they started by buying one building in Hamilton. It was a town that had just kind of fallen away. A lot of the buildings were empty. And so they started one by one, restoring the buildings and starting a whole town of quilt shops and restaurants. And it is quite the place to go. So if you look here in the center of the quilt and here, a lot of these say, "Welcome to Hamilton, your happy place, Missouri Star Quilt Company." And so she and her husband made this road trip, and she bought some of these fabrics while she was there to make this really pretty quilt. And if you look closely at the quilting, which she hired someone to do this, the woman who quilted it is on the other side of the room. And you can see scissors and spools of thread and a sewing machine, and it repeats throughout the quilt. So this is a really nice tribute to her dream come true of traveling to Hamilton, Missouri. I saw the beginning of this quilt. This is a very intricate, precise quilt. And if you look at the border, these are little 1.5-inch squares. Nothing that I would ever attempt, but they are just perfect. And the quilt block begins in the center with one of these tiny squares. So we were at a quilt retreat. There were 12 of us there, and this woman started these little blocks. But the red fabric she had was bleeding. The color red was leaking into the white that she had. And so she said, "I can't continue with this quilt." She had to go home, and I'm not sure if she didn't say. I don't know if she washed them and then washed the red fabric so it wouldn't bleed as much, or if she started over with new fabric. But in the end, she finished them, and this is a fascinating quilt, and the pattern is called Snail's Trail.
Good, because they're the best. I used to think those...
This quilt is called Not Today. This is another mystery quilt from the woman who came to our guild in September. This is made by a woman in Fairfax. who loves mystery quilts, and she makes them all the time. I really like this one because it's not as busy, so I suspect that it went together rather quickly because the pieces are bigger, but a really nice choice of fabrics to accentuate that pattern. This quilt pattern is called Falling Charms, and if you look at it, all of these squares are like a mishmash of different fabrics, from fairies to Superman, to snowflakes, to flowers and bees. It's everything you can imagine. But when you place them in a certain way, with a background that neutralizes everything, you get a really stunning quilt that would be fun for a child to play I Spy. This is a quilt that is, every block is different, and they are all appliqued by hand. And so it's layering pieces and sewing them together and then appliquing them. And then you have sashing to separate them, so you really get the beauty of all of those beautiful different blocks. And the border also neutralizes it, and the quilting accentuates the border. Really nicely done. So we're looking at some more bed quilts. This one is called Orange Sherbet. This is made from a kit, I believe, from Adita Starr. Again, we talked about her at the other end of the row. If you look at these gorgeous colors, we have lots of triangles, we have wedges, and they all go together nicely to create this pattern around this stunning star in the middle. And every once in a while, there's a little bit of green thrown in to just give it some visual appeal. Really nice quilt. This quilt is called Granny's Garden, and all of the stitching on this quilt is done by hand. It is, if you look at this, it's hard to believe that all of this intricate stitching is hand done by this woman. She's made several quilts in the quilt show, and it's just with this scalloped border, which is difficult enough to begin with, but then it's all appliqued by hand. Every evening or anytime she goes anywhere, she takes a quilt with her and works on these kinds of projects. So I'm sure that she built these block by block and then put them all together to make this really beautiful quilt. She also made this quilt she bought a bundle of fabric from this designer. This pattern is by a woman called Lori Holt, and there are other quilts in the show using her patterns. And her fabric line, usually you can pick out her quilt designs from afar because of the fabrics that she designs. So this one is really interesting. It even has a rickrack border here to give it depth. And as you can see, it's a Halloween themed with a big witch and a black cat and a pumpkin, but it also has beautiful small blocks that are all different using her fabric line. Really nice quilt. This quilt is called Autumn Bouquet because all of the fabrics have leaves, fall colors, acorns. It's really, really nicely done, and it's about autumn in Vermont. This woman said it holds a special place in her heart. Pretty quilt. This quilt is called Old Town, and this is also a mystery quilt by a woman called Bonnie Hunter. Many of our members follow her. I go to her website quite a bit, but I haven't done one of her mystery quilts yet because she tends to use very small scraps of fabric in her quilt. This one is lovely. The colors, the pink, red, and turquoise together is one of my favorite combinations. And adding this border really gave it a really nice finish. So this again was done with clues one at a time. This quilt is a pattern designed by the same designer, and using bolder fabrics. You can see that it's not the same design, but it has some similarities because she uses many of these chain type pieces running through quilts, and she uses, this is what we call a 16 patch. These are 16 little blocks together. It's a really nice quilt because of the color choices. The red and gold with the black accents really makes these star-like blocks stand out. But if you look at it a different way, then you get this block. So it's one of those illusion quilts that you see two different things running through it. as you noticed, each quilt has a little story, but this one has a story that I think is unmatched. Each of these blocks was hand embroidered by this person's grandmother. And they had been in a box stored for years, and the block itself is here in the center of each one, and they were all stained. They had become quite yellow, and she didn't know if she could revive them, but she did soak them gently. I don't know what she used especially. Yeah, she doesn't really say, just that her grandmother made them, but I've heard the story. And after she got them as white as she possibly could, then she created this beautiful quilt with the Irish chain running through it. She's from a family of Irish descent, so she wanted to keep it simple so that the blocks themselves really were the shining star of this quilt, and they certainly are. It's just a beautiful historical piece of their family. Okay, this quilt is really fascinating. So if you look at the border fabric, this was the starting point for this quilt. Every block here is made out of, as you can see, hexagons that are cut into triangles and then sewn back together in any way that you want to. And every block is different, but it all came from this same fabric. You layer, as I think, I did one, and I layered 6 layers of fabric together. And it's quite intricate because you have to pin them to make sure that the fabric is aligned perfectly. For example, you might start at the tip of this pink bud, and you go down through all your layers of fabric with a straight pin to make sure that they're all layered perfectly. And then after you've pinned the whole row, you cut it into whatever size. I'm suspecting that this is pretty small. She probably cut it at 4 inches to get these and then you cut it into equilateral triangles to get this stunning effect in the middle of that huge quilt. This must have taken a very long time. This quilt, this woman was gifted this wool flower by her daughter, and she thought, ooh, those colors would make an interesting quilt, which she did. She made the quilt, and then she does this hand quilting. It's called, I think, big stitch quilting. Anyway, she doesn't use regular thread. She uses more of an embroidery floss or a cotton floss that's a little heavier, and she hand stitches all of these designs in her quilt using those 3 colors again, intermittently. They're dispersed throughout it if you really look at it, and it creates this amazing effect. This quilt is called, I bet you can guess, it's called Chickens, because every block is a little bit different, either with the use of fabric or with the layout of the chicken. This is, again, one of the Lori Holt quilts, and you can tell because of the fabrics that she chooses. Each chicken has a different name. This is Hattie, and this is Henrietta, Cornelius. So it's a fun quilt using fun vintage fabrics. I mean, some of them looks like things from the 50s or the 40s hanging on the kitchen wall, as are the flowers. They're all vintage looking fabrics, but they're not old fabrics, just created to look like old fabrics. Nice quilt. This is called Floral Paradise. This woman just she said she liked playing in her grandmother's backyard and in the flower gardens, and she made this as a tribute to her grandmother. And the quilting was done by the woman who has a vending table here, and you can see that she has put flowers interspersed with loops and swirls to give it that really warm effect. Blue and yellow quilts make you feel like home as far as I'm concerned. This is a challenging quilt pattern, and she even says so. She went to Pennsylvania, to the Amish country, and shopped for the fabric for this quilt. And the color choices really do make a stunning effect. And then the feathers that are quilted in between just finish it off beautifully. This pattern is called Flying Geese, and you can see that they look like they're going in different directions, but that's what a flying geese pattern does. And then you have log cabin blocks here. And that's a very traditional block that you can turn different ways to get different effects. And this one creates this wonderful medallion effect around the center of this quilt. These blocks here are also log cabin quilt blocks. No, they're not. They're majestic mountain blocks. I can see the points now. My mistake. So you have different kinds of blocks going on here, and then these wonderful stars created by all of these different shapes. That is a challenging pattern. It's a beautiful quilt. This one, flowers, flowers. She took all of her floral prints and by using the sashing, made it look like different seed packets, and then did some of this beautiful applique to accentuate all those gorgeous flowers and colors. Stunning quilt. And if you look closely at this quilt, this is called crosshatch quilting. This woman quilted this whole quilt by hand. And it is huge. It must have taken her a very long time. But you can really see her quilting in the center, in the applique blocks, but it continues throughout the quilt. Behind me, we started a few years ago and setting up a spot for quilters in our guild to sell some of their finished products. All of us accumulate quilts. We don't have enough storage space in our homes for them. So if you look at the back wall, all of those quilts are for sale. So people coming to this quilt show will have a wonderful time choosing something to sell. To buy, excuse me. I think the prices are quite reasonable. We have bags, we have table toppers and table runners. We have children's bags and all kinds of quilts and books with patterns that you could purchase. And over here we even have a sewing machine, which would be a great starter machine for someone who wants to just give it a try or for a child to experiment with sewing. So come to the show and buy something wonderful to take home for yourself or your friends. This quilt is called Oh Say Can You See? It was made by one of our members who loves a challenge, obviously, because these little blocks are called, excuse me, I'm going to have to start over on this one. These blocks are called half square triangles, and they finish at a 1/2 inch. That is amazing that all of these have these sharp points and that there are so many of them in this quilt. She wanted a fun summer quilt for her bedroom, and she created this gorgeous quilt, and the quilting on the border just gives it that feeling of a flag waving in the breeze as far as I'm concerned. It just gives it motion. It's a beautiful red, white, and blue quilt. This quilt is another mystery quilt by the woman who visited our guild Oh, no, this is a Bonnie Hunter one. We've seen a few of these as well. Some of the fabrics, most of these fabrics she inherited from her grandmother. And she made this beautiful quilt, which really accentuates the darker one in the center by choosing some of those colors from within and just making this gorgeous quilt. That also has a lot of small pieces in it. I might do this one, but I would never do this one. That's what's nice about our guild. We have people who do all different kinds of things. And like this is a very simple block, but look at the beautiful effect just by using fabrics. These black and white fabrics, first of all, I love all of them. And when you add a little pop of red, it just makes a stunning quilt. Not a hard quilt to make, but look what it is in the end. Beautiful. This quilt, if you stand back and look at it, it's made by one of our newer members, but we have a guitar. And it's like a negative, positive effect just by using these beautiful pastel floral prints and creating the shape of the guitar in the center, which is appliqued on top of these fabrics. And the quilting is done by the woman here, who is here, and these are all like musical notes. It's a really, really nice quilt. Nice tribute to a musician. This is called Be My Valentine, and I bet you can guess why. All these beautiful fabrics about love, and she created this really nice block pattern that ends up looking like a big heart. And then took the fabrics and made this really nice, what we call a piano key border, by cutting them like this and just making strips. Sewing them together makes a really stunning border to accentuate all your fabrics again. Really nice quilt. This one, again, is a Lori Holt quilt. You can tell by those fabrics. They give you that feeling of the vintage look. All of these blocks are the same, but they look very different because of the choice of fabrics. We saw a quilt earlier that had laundry baskets in the corners, but this one has the birds in the corners. And again, a unique border that really follows throughout the quilt. This quilt is made from a woman who does patterns called 3-yard quilts. So you choose 3 yards of fabric that complement one another, and she has books, maybe up to 7 or 8 books now, different patterns for 3-yard quilts. And this one is one of them, and every pattern has some kind of a silver swirl in it, and even the background fabric has little silver dots. So it's called Wish Upon a Star. They're really a fun, fast quilt to make if you need to make a quilt for someone who's going through cancer treatment or someone who had surgery and you just want to give them some comfort to recuperate, or for a child for a birthday gift, because they do go together quite quickly. This quilt, she named it Mango Tango, a display of color and pattern. And really, I would think that this border fabric was more than likely the inspiration, because all of these fabrics really do complement it. And she put them together in a nice framed situation so that you really do see all those fabrics, the beautiful colors. This quilt, one of my friends made for her grandson, who is a drummer. He's learning. And she found this fabric. She had it printed at a place called Spoonflower, where you can get fabric there that you can't find anywhere else. So we went through fabric on hand and found all the rest of this fabric, even the music notes, to complement it. And she did this design herself, making these centerpieces almost look like a drum. It's really a nice quilt. It turned out really nicely. This quilt is called Nature Walk, and if you look closely, every fabric has something you might see on your morning walk along the roadside, from mushrooms to certain flowers to leaves, owls. It's really nice choice of fabrics too. Very nice. And raccoons and ants. So this is called the Straits of Mackinac. This woman had this top done since 2021, and she decided it was time to put it together. And it really is a beautiful display of another Bonnie Hunter pattern, where you would get clues. It's a mystery quilt, so you might make these small squares and then put them together into a block, and another time you might make the diamonds. But again, a really nice mystery quilt that has a swirl look about it. It looks like it has curved seams, but it doesn't. Everything is straight. It just gives the illusion of curve. This quilt is by a designer called Gudrun Ehrlich, and this pattern has been made in many different fabric choices. This is a fabric collection called a layer cake, which is 10-inch squares of the same fabric design, but in a different color. So you have all these different colors that were just put together to create this geometric quilt. This quilt is called Modern Labyrinth. Again, using fabrics to really make a statement. And instead of using a light colored sashing, she used the red to offset the black and white designs. This is the same person who made the black and white quilt with the pinwheels that popped off it. Again, nice use of her fabrics. This is a hopeful quilt. It's called Summer is Coming, and it really does make you feel good. It's these beautiful squares, again, by the same designer as this quilt, but very different. She has done workshops, she does retreats where you sit in your home and sew with people from all over the world. And 5 of our members just did one of her retreats. It's 3 days long, and you sit in your sewing area all day and work on a project, but talk to women or men from all over the world. And these are probably her fabric designs as well. It's a very nice pattern. You don't often see squares that kind of look like a circle. This pattern is from a woman who lives in, I believe, Shelburne, Vermont. And she did a workshop for our guild. She spoke to us and then did a workshop. She has designed patterns for every state, most countries, and if you have some place that you would like a wall hanging or a quilt for, from some place she hasn't made the pattern yet, she will design it for you. Her name is Karen Abrahamovich, and she lives, I believe, in Shelburne, and she has made all these patterns. She has a website, so you can purchase the patterns if you're interested. I watched this come together. This was a panel, which is a pre-printed piece of fabric. This person loves, they love going to state parks, and so she took this panel and did what we call thread painting. If you look closely, you can see some of the thread work that she did. She appliqued the clouds on here and the condors. She also created this waterfall using fabric that has like movement in it, and made this for her husband as a birthday gift. Really nice piece, starting with a panel that someone else just printed on fabric. All right, this is another one of the I Love Vermont patterns made by one of our members, obviously. And she did something different by using different colored strips instead of all one color. Most people use greens. And she did some really nice quilting in there to give it like depth and body and character. It's very sweet. I like throwing the pink and the blue in there. This is called Fairy Quilt, and he designed that fairy himself and used these really pretty fabrics to just give her her place of honor. Yeah, she wanted to bring the fairy to life. That's what he said, and he certainly did. It's a very nice quilt. Some little girl or some person who thinks fairies are wonderful would just adore that quilt. This is called Quilts Across the Country, and it's made from a panel. You can see that these are pre-printed, and she cut them out and put them together in a way with sashing and borders to really make it quite nice. So you can do a lot with pre-printed panels if you use your imagination. You can see the quilts hanging on the clotheslines here. Here's another tree quilt. This was, we have a program called Block of the Month, where each month we have someone, one of our members, who comes in. She's made a block and she shows us how to make it. So this was the block of the month, I believe, for December. And this, they do a drawing, and this man happened to win these blocks, and he made this lovely quilt with all those trees. This is a fun block to make. I made a Christmas table runner from it. I really liked it. This is called Forget Me Not. This is by the woman who loves the flowers and her grandmother's flower garden. And Forget Me Not flowers are one of her favorite, and they're a symbol of remembrance of those who have passed away. And she did this in memory of those she has loved and lost throughout her life. She also made this one. This one is called Loretta's Lilacs because she obviously loves flowers and she seems to like shades of purple. But this is a really pretty way to just show off one fabric that you really like. She also does this very clever scalloped border, which is very tricky. You have to do a lot of math to get it to come out correctly so that your corners are rounded at the right place and with the same shape each corner to corner. It's a very tricky process, but she does a really nice job with that. This is called Pennsylvania. It's another Adidas Star pattern from Laundry Basket Quilts, and this is all hand appliqued, and she does her own quilting, which is really very talented. She's doing the feathers on the border, and she does the small loops and pebbles inside. She even has a butterfly here and there scattered about. This quilt is called Salsa. It's from a jelly roll. So I talked about layer cakes, 10-inch squares of fabric of one fabric designer. This is a jelly roll. So you literally get a roll of fabric cut into 2.5-inch strips, and all of them will go together somehow. And you can see she made this lovely quilt to show how all of these fabrics from that roll of fabric made this really nice quilt. I use jelly rolls and layer cakes on occasion. When I first started quilting, I used them more. I have a whole bunch of them in my stash that I haven't used that probably need some attention at some point. This is called Hearts and Flowers, aptly named, and it's really stunning in that she used these very, very dark fabrics but accentuated it with the gold, the neutrals, and it really shows off this traditional older pattern using the flowers and the hearts. It looks to me like a vintage quilt, and using this border fabric that almost looks tea stained, you know, it gives it an older look, but it's a very chic pattern, and the applique job she did is just wonderful. This is called Color Fun Cats. This is by the woman who, her name actually is Cats, not spelled the same way, but all of these light fabrics are cats who are smiling at us, and she just accentuated this little black and white fabric with all these brilliant colors, making it a stunning quilt, and she does the big stitch quilting. Gave it a nice touch. She also tied, which is an old quilting method, to tie your quilts as opposed to quilting them, but the hand quilting and the tying gives it a really nice effect as well. It's a fun quilt. This is a quilt I made. I saw the picture of it and I said, I just love the effect of this quilt. So I went through my stash and I found all of these fabrics. I didn't buy any fabrics for this quilt except the backing. And that was kind of a nice thing to do also. So the challenge for me was finding a way to showcase all these neutrals in a way that they just kind of sat together nicely with the columns running behind it. And it came out really nice. I don't know what I'm going to do with it. Probably gift it to a man at some point in time. This is called Vintage Tin. This is all hand embroidered. It looks like she did take a trip on Route 66. She has maps, she has license plates. I just want to take a look at this quilt label. Her summer camping trips, she said. She said it has seen a lot of miles in the summer because of the work that she did on it when they were traveling. Taking the time to do this hand embroidery is beyond, I think, anything I would take on, but I'm not there yet. I know how to hand embroider, I just don't do it anymore. This is stunning. And the border of all the flying geese of the black and white fabrics. It's a great quilt. This quilt, she made this quilt to display at her church. The stained glass look of the fabric gives a feeling, she said, of serenity and hope. You can see this star. This is the first time that this person has entered a quilt in our quilt show. And look at this stunning quilt. She did the quilting herself on her sewing machine. Really nice quilt. This is a more modern quilt, as you can see. One of our members does a variety of artistic work. She uses all different methods. She dyes her own fabric. She does all of this quilting. This has flowers and little tiny straight lines. It has this geometric pattern. All of the colors have a pattern that she chose. So all of the orange has this same pattern in it. And she does that all freeform on her sewing machine. This is all about texture, she said. I believe she said she did a workshop and learned how to put things together in a way that in the end it has continuity and it works. And most of that is because it's very random in the way this circular blocks are placed. But if you look at it, it's really a stunning modern quilt. She calls it playtime because she practiced her quilting on this. This is called The Key to My Folk Heart. This fabric is by a designer called Anna Marie Horner, and a lot of it is inspired by Indian prints. And as you can see, they are very different, you know, even the hand. Yeah, that's part of the fabric. I just wanted to make sure it wasn't appliqued. But there is applique on it in the center. She even hung a key on there, the key to my folk art, because this is very folk art-like in the fabrics that she chose. Very different quilt. And it also, she added some embroidery also, different places you can see where she quilted. She also did, this is all appliqued on top of the blue fabric. So really a lot of work in this quilt. It looks like all one fabric that you might see in a marketplace in India, but it isn't. It's all different fabrics put together. This is called Love Vermont Snow. So it's another take on the Vermont pattern from Karen Abrahamovich. I'm finding threads as I go through. This is called Christmas Trees. It's a table runner that she made for Christmas. She thought her table needed a little flair, and these are just big triangles that are inverted, sewn together, and then the tree trunks put on, but it really makes a nice effect for your table at Christmas time. Okay, this is made by a woman who, it's a first-time entry in our show as well. I don't know why it doesn't have that, but she appliqued all of these things on this fabric and then chose these border fabrics to make this. She goes camping. She belongs to a group called Girls Something, but I can't remember the name of her group, but she made this to have for her camping trips with her women who come from all over New England, I believe, actually, and they camp in different places during the summer. This is a storm at sea pattern. If you look at it, it looks like there are curves, but they're all straight lines. And she did a workshop. She took a class with a quilt maven called David Serrata. He did a workshop for our guild last year, but she did another class with him and learned how to do all of these things with a paper piecing method. He calls it No More Tears, or Piecing Without Tears, or something. But it's a really fun, I've done it. It's a workshop that you learn how to do things in a different way and get these really sharp points that you might not get if you were just sewing them together. This is called America, no surprise. This woman has been quilting for many years. They fly the American flag in their yard, she said. And with all the uncertainty and turmoil in the country, she wanted red, white, and blue in her house, so she made this to hang on a large wall that she has in her kitchen. And I've seen it hanging on the wall. It looks great. It's a beautiful quilt. I made this one. I started it several times to get the effect. I was following a pattern, and I had a special ruler, but I wasn't. I had read the directions a couple times, but I missed one very important thing, and it's how you get started. So here's the block right here, and you always have to start with this white piece to build this. It's like a log cabin, but you use different sizes. You can see these are thin and these are thicker, and by sewing 4 of them together, you get this wave. So once I got the knack of using the ruler properly, it's amazing what a beautiful wall hanging I have in my sewing room. And I had it quilted by a woman who used to live here but now has moved away. But she had just moved. She quilted this for me and mailed it back to me. And I just went, oh my gosh, you made this into something much more beautiful than I could have imagined. This, I have never seen anything like it. It is using ties. And we had to do a Dresden plate project last year, and she started that. She found the bag of ties, she said, on a free table at a retreat. So she picked them up, and you can see here that they are literally woven together to create this. It's very, very heavy, and she added this brooch to give it style. It's really, really pretty. She did her own long arm quilting on that. Really nice quilt. This is the challenge quilt wall. Each year for the quilt show, we toss out a challenge. And this year the challenge was anything 25 because it's our 25th anniversary. So this is the blizzard of 78, the crazy blizzard of 78. At the time, this woman was living in Massachusetts near the ocean, and the blizzard hit, and she was trying to get home from Boston, and the ocean was raging. So she just wanted to depict how she experienced the storm. She added layers of things like crocheting and these feathers from a yarn and soft things and snowflakes. She built a snowman out of little fuzzy things and put a star at the top. A fun little wall hanging to depict something that happened 25 years ago. Or more, actually more. But this is Happy 25. She embroidered flower stems in all of these little blocks. This is called a churn dash block, and she put little tiny buttons in there. I don't know how she did that, by hand obviously, but it's a really cute way of, she just said she wanted to do something fun to depict the 25th anniversary of the quilt show. Nice little wall hanging. And this one is obvious, Franklin County Quilt Guild 25, and this is our logo, the sugar house. And it's fun, the way that she had it quilted. This was quilted by a woman named Sally Krupp, who used to be in our guild, and she took this border fabric and quilted it with a variegated thread, so you have different colors coming through, and did those fun bursting stars. It's a really cute wall hanging. This is done by one of our members who went to a quilt shop and found this package of little gnomes, and so she made it into a wall hanging. She designed the grass and the laundry of the quilt hanging on the clothesline. She did all of that, but the gnome was pre-made and she just did the quilting around it. All right, this one is all about quilting. She got the idea from an advent calendar where you open a window each day of the month heading up to Christmas. And so she thought, why can't I do the same kind of thing and have it be all about quilting? So each of the pockets has something else in it to do with quilting to celebrate the 25 years. And here's a pin of our guild. I mean, it's just really clever having all those fun things on there to celebrate 25 years of quilt shows. This one is Name These 25 Blocks in Fall Splendor. So each block is a different pattern. I cannot name them all, but you can see that she quilted around them to give them a puffy effect, which gives it a more three-dimensional look. And then the quilting in here mimics some of the blocks. It's a really nice way to celebrate 25 years of quilt shows by having 25 different blocks. This woman created this and used her embroidery machine to embroider the letters. And she appliqued this on afterwards. She printed, I don't know if she printed it, but it's all appliqued. You can see she did all this fine stitching around it. And that is our logo for our quilt guild. This one is called Sew Day. She actually took some kind of a plastic. I don't know where she found it. She said sewing is her therapy. So she made the pinwheels with leftover squares from another quilt. And then the background fabric represents the silver anniversary of the show. The hanging pinwheel signifies that there is always another project waiting for you. And this one is the Green Mountains Four Seasons to commemorate 25 years of our show. And she tried this big stitch quilting for the first time to really accentuate her flying geese. And if you look closely, she has the four seasons depicted in the colors of the green fabrics. Obviously this one's fall. And then she has some winter fabrics in here to make it cooler. But yeah, she had fun designing that and putting these blocks together, the triangles together, to make her larger triangles. Now we're going to move on to wall hangings. We have quite a few wall hangings this year. This one is a project that this quilter started at a workshop in 2009, and she had put it away and took it out this year and said, I should just finish this. It resurfaced 2 years ago, so she finished it, got it quilted, and she called it Better Late Than Never. It's really a beautiful quilt with the flying geese going around the stars. Nice quilt. This one is called Spring Has Sprung. This is all hand appliqued, and then she has used the stars in the different colors to kind of link it all together. Red Work Revisited. This is the first time entry by this person. And she's done this beautiful embroidery and used these vintage fabrics to really make it shine. Nice wall hanging. This is called the Three Mooses, Mo, Larry, and Curly. And all of these are cut, I think they're cutouts. No, they're batik squares. They were already printed, but she quilted all the way around them. You can see the batik fabrics give it a lot of depth, featuring the moose. And she lives on the top of Hazen's Notch in Montgomery, Vermont. So I bet she sees moose on a regular basis. She wanted to make a simple wall hanging so that the moose would really shine. An interesting choice of fabrics. The lavender, you can pick it up here in the outside. It runs throughout this other batik fabric that kind of mimics the colors in the moose. Really nicely done. It certainly shows off the moose. This, along with another one up here, are from a workshop that we did a couple of years ago with David Serrata, who taught us a new paper piecing method that many of us have tried and didn't like, but I liked his method. I've done this same. I have this similar one hanging in my living room. This is called Reliance. It's based on a block called the New Hampshire Beauty, which is, you know, a total star like this, but he took that and made it his own by doing the cutout block. But it's very hard to get these sharp points, but with his method, it made it really come together easily. And here's another one. She calls it Let the Light Shine In, because she used these darker kind of muted fabrics, but the sun itself is shining brightly through in this wall hanging. And it was the No More Tears piecing method used here and used in another quilt that we looked at. This is called Up North Autumn Take Two. This woman loves to do these patterns by a designer called Sue Pritt, and everything on here is appliqued. You know, the quilt on the Adirondack chair is a very classic Sue Pritt design. I've done one of them, but she has the cattails and the birds with their little scarves on. It's a really nice wall hanging. She does a great job with the applique. This is called the Christmas Ugly Sweater wall hanging. So she took a pattern of ugly sweaters and found some fabrics that she thought worked, and she adorned them with like either a necklace or beads, or the Santa one has like the fur on it for Santa Claus. It's a really cute holiday or winter actually wall hanging. Or you could give it to someone who hosts the ugly sweater party. This is called Winter Scene. She actually took a panel. These are all cut from a panel, and you cut them into blocks. You can see that the panel itself is the same size. And then you border it with certain fabrics to give it the look of looking out the window at the snow falling on the trees and the mountains in the background. And you can find all those things if you look carefully. This is called All in a Day's Work. It's the hens, you know, taking care of the coop. And she's done some applique at the bottom, but the hens themselves give thanks, clean the coop, tuck them in, time for yourself, prepare the meals. It's a very cute wall hanging. They had chickens in their family. Her mother always had chickens, so she thinks about her mom every time she looks at this wall hanging. This is stunning. It's called Stained Glass Poppy. Poppies remind her of her favorite movie, The Wizard of Oz, and she wanted to use these brightly colored batiks again, the fabrics with depth, and she made these flowers. And if you look closely, you can see that she has lined them all with the black sashing to emphasize them. It looks like you drew them and outlined them, or outlined them and colored in, and it's a stunning effect. And that's all appliqued. A lot of work there. This also is a lot of work. It's called Springtime Pineapples. A pineapple block is where you start in the center and you keep building around it by sewing little corners on these. And using these really small pieces is not my idea of fun. I've made a pineapple quilt, but the pieces were 2.5 inches wide instead of, I don't know, maybe an inch to begin with. Maybe less, I'm not sure. It's a very pretty pineapple though, and when you use the same color in the centers of all your blocks, it kind of neutralizes it and brings it all together. Another Vermont, but this is autumn in Vermont, and she used up some of her really beautiful fall prints to create this, and she did the straight line quilting, which gives it a really nice effect. Yep. She said she cursed at herself when piecing her strips into a fall palette, but she was very pleased with the final result, and she should be. That's a really nice wall hanging. This one, Give Thanks. All applique, the beautiful leaves, and with the green, give it a nice fall look to put on your table or to hang over a window maybe. I did this one. It's similar to the large one we saw on the other side of the room, where I started with panels. I bought 6 panels that were an under the sea theme. So if you look closely, you can find them throughout. Same process where you maybe took the nose of a dolphin and you put your pin down through the 6 layers, pinned it carefully, and I cut mine into 5-inch strips. So my medallions, my finished hexagons are much larger. So if you look closely somewhere, you can find, like, here's some coral. Here's a part of an octopus. More coral. Here's the eye of the dolphin and the rainbow fish and these fish. I mean, it's just kind of a fun quilt. I have it on the back of my sofa, and I just enjoy looking at it. It's very different. This is all flying geese going in different directions, and the background fabric has all those beautiful colors in it. She wanted to give it a modern twist, so she turned them around and had them going in different directions, even the corner blocks. She likes how she said the soft feather quilting gives a nice edge to the sharpness of the flying geese blocks. These are our miniature quilts this year. We only had 3 entries, but if you look at them, they are uniquely different. So let's start with this one. This is called Parade of Plaid Birdhouses. She wanted to try doing a miniature quilt, and she loved this pattern. It's the largest project that she's ever done with paper piecing. And you can see, if you look closely, the roof of this birdhouse is so tiny that you couldn't do that if you were just sewing on the machine. So you have to do this process where you actually sew pieces onto paper one by one. You can see the top of the birdhouse has a tiny little triangle look, and then all of these pieces are separate in each block. That is amazing because they are so tiny. But she said it was fun to do, and she found all those plaids at her sister's. That was a bonus. This is called the Winter Visitor. It is appliqued using her embroidery machine because she's got a fancy stitch around the cardinal. And then she used some of her Christmas fabric and buttons to give it a nice holly berry look. A nice Christmas wall hanging, or winter, I guess. And this is done by the person who did the other modern quilt. And she used, again, color and quilting. So you can see that this is all the same fabric, but she quilted in between with tiny little stitches to give it that lifted effect, to give it depth. And she did it here in the gold as well. It shows a little bit more in the gold, plain gold fabric with the quilting on top to give it that raised effect. And she did that throughout and used these wonderful colors that are kind of a woven fabric. It's not your usual quilting fabric, but for a wall hanging, you can be more, you can experiment more with different kinds of fabric. This is a very tight weave. And then our final 2 quilts are something of a project. So these 2 women went to a quilt show in Quebec last year, and they saw these quilts. They're called pixel quilts. And what they did was they took a picture of their cats, which are hanging here with their quilt, and you have to really back away from them to get the effect. This one was done with I think she started with 1.5-inch pieces of fabric to finish at 1-inch square. And this one is done with 2-inch pieces of fabric to finish at 1.5-inch square. So they have a little bit different effect. This one, when you back away from it, has more detail. So you can see both of the cats in the pictures, and then when you back away or look at it through your phone camera, you get this beautiful image of their cats. So thank you for joining us at the Franklin County Quilt Show this year in St. Albans, Vermont, right on Main Street at City Hall. This beautiful building has been restored, and it welcomes people every year as we show off our work and are proud to talk about our connections in our community. So we hope you visit. Thank you.